I'm leaving you, and I'm taking half of the $8 million.
There's just one problem. The money was never yours, and I already froze every account.
The night my wife raised a glass and announced that she was leaving me. She was wearing a $2,000 dress she had bought with money that did not belong to her. She smiled at our friends, touched the diamond at her throat, and said, "I finally have enough money to stop pretending." What she did not know was that I had already frozen every account. Hello, my name is Daniel Mercer. I am 52 years old, and for 24 years, I believed my marriage was the safest place in my life. I was wrong. This is the story of the inheritance my wife thought was hers, the secret she hid inside our home, and the quiet revenge that taught her the difference between owning money and being trusted with it. It began 3 months earlier, on a wet Tuesday morning in Portland, Oregon. I was in my workshop, repairing an old walnut desk, when my phone rang. The caller was Helen Ward, my late uncle's attorney. Uncle Raymond had died 2 weeks before. He had no children, and I had been the closest thing he had to a son. Helen asked me to come to her office alone. When I arrived, she closed the door and placed a gray folder in front of me. Then she told me Uncle Raymond had left an estate worth a little more than $8 million. I could barely breathe. Raymond had lived simply. He drove an old truck, wore the same brown coat for 15 winters, and complained when coffee cost more than $3. I knew he owned property, but I had no idea how much. Then Helen gave me the first surprise. "The money is not an ordinary inheritance," she said. "It is held in the Mercer family trust. You are the sole beneficiary. Your wife has no ownership interest in the principal." I stared at the papers. Why make it so complicated? Helen slid a handwritten letter across the desk. Raymond had written, "Daniel, money does not change people. It turns up the volume on who they already are. Before you share this news, listen carefully to the people around you." I read that line twice. The trust would pay me a modest monthly amount. Larger withdrawals required approval from Helen and a second trustee. If I died, most of the estate would fund trade school scholarships. My wife, Vanessa, could receive support only if we were still married and only at the trustee's discretion. Raymond had built a legal wall around the money. At first, I thought he had gone too far. Vanessa and I had shared a life for more than 2 decades. We had survived debt, illness, job losses, and the death of our baby daughter, Lily. Surely I could trust my own wife. That evening, I told her. Vanessa was chopping vegetables. When I said, $8 million, the knife stopped in midair. 8, she whispered. A little over 8, but it is in a trust. She put the knife down and hugged me. Her body shook, and for one beautiful second I thought she was crying from relief. Then she asked, "How soon can we get it?" "Not you, not I. We?" I explained the limits. Her arms slowly loosened around me. "So your dead uncle is still controlling us?" she asked. "He is protecting the estate." From whom? The question hung between us. I laughed because I did not know what else to do. Vanessa did not. Within a week, she changed. At first, the changes were small. She ordered expensive wine at dinner. She sent me listings for houses overlooking the river. She told her sister that we were finally wealthy. Each time I reminded her that the trust was not a checking account, she rolled her eyes. Then packages began arriving. Designer shoes, handbags, skin treatments, jewelry. Vanessa said she had used her personal credit card and would pay it off when funds cleared. I asked her to stop spending money we did not have. She smiled like I was a nervous child. "Daniel, poor people save. Rich people use leverage." That sentence did not sound like my wife. 2 days later, our bank called. Someone had tried to use a copy of the trust summary as security for a $3,000 personal loan. The application carried my electronic signature. I had never signed it. When I confronted Vanessa, she did not look frightened. She looked annoyed. "I was trying to surprise you," she said. "The River House will not stay on the market forever." "You forged my signature. Do not be dramatic. Married people sign things for each other, not loan applications." She folded her arms. "You always find a way to make abundance feel like punishment." That night, she slept in the guest room. I stayed awake until dawn, hearing Uncle Raymond's warning in my head, "Listen carefully." The next surprise came from my younger brother, Eric. Eric and I had never been close. He was charming, reckless, and always one crisis away from asking for money. He called to congratulate me, even though I had not told him about the inheritance. "Vanessa says you hit the jackpot," he said. My hand tightened around the phone. "What exactly did Vanessa tell you?" "Relax. She is excited. She said you too might invest in my development project." There was no development project. Eric had lost money on 3 failed businesses in 6 years. I told him the estate was locked in a trust. He laughed. "Every lock has a key, brother." After the call, I checked our phone records. Vanessa and Eric had spoken 11 times that month. Some calls lasted more than an hour. Most happened while I was at work. I wanted an innocent explanation. I wanted one so badly that I became afraid to ask the question. Instead, I started paying attention. Vanessa guarded her phone. She left the room to answer messages. She began taking long evening walks wearing perfume. When she returned, she seemed energized, almost younger. One Friday, she said she was meeting her sister for dinner. Her sister called our house 20 minutes later and asked to speak with her. I said Vanessa was in the shower. It was the first lie I told to protect the investigation that was forming inside my own marriage. I did not follow Vanessa. I was too afraid of what I might see. Instead, I called Helen. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Do not accuse anyone yet. Give me copies of your bank records and the forged application. Change every password. And Daniel, do not tell Vanessa what you are doing." The next morning, I created a new email address, moved my personal documents to a safe deposit box, and installed a small camera in my workshop. The workshop was legally mine, separate from the house, and it contained the file cabinet, where I kept copies of the trust papers. For 3 days, nothing happened. On the fourth night, Vanessa entered the workshop at 1:17 in the morning. I watched the recording at Helen's office. Vanessa wore gloves. She opened dramatographed documents and searched under my desk. Then she called someone. "The schedule is here," she whispered. "He gets the first major distribution after the property sale. We just need him to move it into the joint account." She paused. Then she said a name. "Eric, stop worrying. Daniel still trusts me." My brother answered, but the camera did not record his words. Vanessa laughed softly. It was not the laugh that broke me. It was the kiss she pressed to the phone before hanging up. For several minutes, I could not move. Helen placed a box of tissues near me. I did not touch it. I felt too empty to cry. "How long?" I finally asked. "We do not know," she said. "I need to know." So I hired a licensed investigator named Maria Collins. Maria was direct and careful. She warned me that truth rarely arrives in a clean shape. Then she spent 10 days documenting what I had been too frightened to see. Vanessa and Eric met at hotels. They toured houses together. They opened a private mailbox under a company name. They even visited a divorce attorney. But the worst discovery was not the affair. Maria found a storage unit rented by Vanessa. Inside were new suitcases, prepaid phones, and copies of my medical records. There was also a printed article about challenging a trust when a beneficiary lacked mental capacity. They were not merely planning to leave me. They were planning to declare me incompetent, move the money, and disappear. I sat in my truck outside the storage facility and vomited into the rain. For 24 years, Vanessa had known my deepest weakness. After Lily died, I suffered a breakdown. I spent 6 weeks in a treatment center. I had recovered, but the shame never fully left me. Vanessa had comforted me then. Now she intended to turn that wound into a weapon. My first instinct was rage. I imagined confronting them, shouting until the windows shook. But anger would warn them, and warning them would allow them to destroy evidence. So I did something harder. I went home and acted like a trusting husband. I kissed Vanessa's cheek. I praised her new dress. I told her Helen had approved a large distribution after Uncle Raymond's final property sold. I said nearly $2 million would soon be available. Vanessa's eyes brightened. "In the joint account?" she asked. I pretended to hesitate. Then I nodded. She hugged me with more warmth than she had shown in months. That night, she made my favorite dinner. She opened a bottle of wine. She put on the blue dress I had bought her for our 20th anniversary. The performance was perfect, except now I could see the stage. After dinner, she suggested a celebration party. "Not for the money," she said quickly. "For your uncle. For the new chapter he gave us." I agreed. The trap was her idea. I only helped her build it. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa planned the party like a queen preparing her coronation. She invited friends, relatives, former coworkers, and neighbors. She hired a caterer we could not afford and ordered the $2,000 black dress. Meanwhile, Helen and Maria worked with the bank and the police. The forged loan application, secret company, false documents, and attempted transfer created a trail. We also learned that Eric had drafted an email pretending to be me. It instructed Helen to replace her as trustee because she was hostile to my marriage. The email was scheduled to send from my old laptop. Vanessa knew the password because it was Lily's birthday. That detail hurt more than almost anything else. Then came a twist I did not expect. Maria discovered that Vanessa had been taking small amounts from our household account for 7 years. At first it was $50 here, $200 there. Later it became thousands. She had hidden the money in an account controlled by Eric. The affair had not begun after the inheritance. It had begun before Uncle Raymond died. The money had not corrupted my wife. It had simply made her careless. I asked Maria how much they had taken. "Just under $94,000, she said. That included money I believed we had spent on Lily's memorial foundation. For years, Vanessa told me she was making annual donations in our daughter's name. There had been no donations after the first year. She had created fake receipts and kept the money. I finally cried then. Not for the marriage. That was already dead. I cried because Vanessa had stolen from the memory of our child, and Eric had helped her. At that moment, revenge stopped being about humiliation. It became about justice. Helen filed emergency notices with the bank. Every joint credit line was restricted. The trust issued a formal statement confirming that no distribution would enter a joint account. I changed my will. If anything happened to me, Vanessa and Eric would receive nothing. Every dollar would go to the Lily Mercer Scholarship Fund. Then I prepared for the party. The guests arrived on a Saturday evening. Music filled our backyard. White lights hung between the trees. Vanessa moved through the crowd in her black dress, touching shoulders and accepting compliments as if she already owned $8 million. Eric arrived late. He wore a new watch and kissed Vanessa on the cheek a little too close to her mouth. When he saw me watching, he grinned. "Big night, brother," he said. "The biggest," I answered. At 9 o'clock, Vanessa tapped a spoon against her glass. She thanked everyone for coming. She talked about difficult years and fresh beginnings. Then she placed one hand on my shoulder. "Daniel has always been a cautious man," she said. "Sometimes too cautious. But tonight, our lives finally change." People applauded. Vanessa lifted her glass higher. "And I have an announcement of my own. I am done pretending." The yard became quiet. She stepped away from me. "I filed for divorce this morning." A woman near the pool gasped. Eric lowered his face, but I saw his smile. Vanessa continued. "I gave this marriage 24 years. I will not apologize for taking my fair share and choosing happiness." She expected me to collapse. That was the final part of their plan. Public shock. Emotional distress. A camera was recording from Eric's jacket. They hoped to capture me shouting or behaving irrationally. They wanted evidence for their claim that I was unstable. Instead, I smiled. "Thank you, Vanessa," I said. Her expression changed. I took the microphone from her hand. "You saved me the trouble of making my first announcement." Eric stopped smiling. I turned toward our guests. "The inheritance Vanessa mentioned is not marital property. It belongs to a protected family trust. No money was ever scheduled to enter our joint account." Vanessa's face lost its color. "That is not true," she said. "It is. And at 6 o'clock this evening, the bank froze the accounts connected to the fraudulent loan application." She stared at me. "What did you do?" I listened. On a screen beside the patio, the camera footage from my workshop began to play. Vanessa appeared in gloves, photographing the trust documents. Her recorded voice carried across the yard. "We just need him to move it into the joint account." Then came the name. "Eric, stop worrying. Daniel still trusts me." The kiss followed. No one spoke. Eric rushed toward the screen, but two plainclothes detectives stepped forward. They did not arrest him then. They simply told him not to touch anything and asked him to remain available for questioning. Vanessa looked around at the faces of our friends. "This is edited," she said. "Daniel is sick. He has been sick before." That was the moment I knew she would never feel remorse. Helen walked out from the house carrying a folder. "My name is Helen Ward," she said calmly. "I am counsel for the Mercer Family Trust. The recording has been authenticated, so have the forged loan documents, the false email, and the financial records tied to a company controlled by Mr. Eric Mercer." Vanessa turned to Eric. "You said the company could not be traced." It was the first honest thing she had said all night. Eric cursed under his breath and moved toward the gate. A detective blocked him. I handed Vanessa an envelope. Inside was my response to her divorce filing, a request for repayment of the missing household funds, and notice that I was seeking possession of the house under our prenuptial agreement. Vanessa had insisted on that agreement before our wedding, because she believed my furniture business would fail and leave her responsible for my debt. The agreement protected property acquired from family. It also punished financial fraud. For 24 years, she had forgotten it existed. Now it was the blade she had sharpened for herself. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered. "You rented a storage unit," I said. "Start there." She slapped me. The sound cracked through the silent yard. I did not touch her. I did not raise my voice. I looked at the detective, who had witnessed it, and said, "I would like that included in the report." Vanessa finally understood that every move she made was closing another door. She grabbed her purse and ran into the house. A minute later she returned, furious. "My cards do not work. They were connected to the fraudulent debt," Helen said. "The bank restricted them. My money is in those accounts." "No," I said. "That was the mistake you made from the beginning. You thought every dollar near me belonged to you." The party ended without music. Guests left in small, stunned groups. Some avoided my eyes. Others touched my arm as they passed. Vanessa's sister stayed behind long enough to say she was sorry. Then she drove Vanessa to a hotel. Eric spent the night answering questions. The weeks afterward were ugly. Vanessa told people I had trapped her. She said I had emotionally abused her by hiding financial information. Eric claimed the company and the money were gifts. Their stories changed whenever new evidence appeared. But documents do not become confused. Bank records do not feel loyalty. Timestamps do not protect family secrets. The scheduled email was recovered. The forged signatures matched files on Vanessa's tablet. Hotel records confirmed the affair. The storage unit contained the proposed incompetency petition, complete with false statements about my behavior. Then Eric betrayed Vanessa. Faced with fraud charges and a mountain of evidence, he gave prosecutors access messages in exchange for consideration. Those messages showed that Vanessa had designed most of the plan. She had chosen the houses, drafted the false medical claims, and promised Eric $1 million after they took control of the trust. She had also written one sentence that ended any sympathy I might have had left. Once Daniel signs, we can put him somewhere quiet. He will get used to it. She meant a care facility. She planned to lock me away using the pain she once helped me survive. The divorce took 11 months. Vanessa did not receive half the trust. She did not receive 1%. Under our agreement and state law, the inheritance remained separate. The judge ordered the sale of her jewelry and luxury purchases to repay part of the money taken from our household account. She also gave up her claim to the house in exchange for avoiding a longer civil fight. The criminal case ended with a plea. She received probation, restitution, community service, and a permanent record. Some people said that was too gentle. At first, I agreed. Then I learned what her life had become. The friends who admired her disappeared. The river house was sold to another buyer. The black dress was returned, stained, and the store refused the refund. She moved into a small apartment, worked evenings at a call center. Every month, a portion of her paycheck went toward restitution. Eric took a plea as well. He sold his truck, his watch, and what little remained of his business. Our mother begged me to forgive him. I told her forgiveness was not the same as access. I could release my anger without reopening my door. I have not spoken to him since. But the most important part of my revenge was not what they lost. It was what the money became. 1 year after the party, I stood inside an old brick building on the east side of Portland. The trust had purchased and renovated it as the Lily Mercer Center for Skilled Trades. We offered scholarships in carpentry, electrical work, welding, and automotive repair. The first class included 40 students, single parents, former foster children, veterans, and people rebuilding their lives after prison. On opening day, I told them about Uncle Raymond. I told them he believed a person's hands could rebuild more than furniture or engines. They could rebuild dignity. I did not tell them every detail about Vanessa. That story no longer owned the room. After the ceremony, a young woman named Kayla showed me a small wooden box she had made. The corners were not perfect, but the lid fit. She said her father had told her she would never finish anything. I finished this, she said. I ran my hand over the rough edge and thought about Lily. I imagined the woman daughter might have become. For the first time in years, that thought did not destroy me. It gave me peace. 6 months later, I received a letter from Vanessa. She said she was sorry. She said Eric had manipulated her. She said fear had made her do terrible things. At the end, she asked whether I could forgive the remaining restitution because she wanted chance to begin again. I read the letter once. Then I wrote a short reply. Vanessa, I hope you do begin again. But a new beginning is not the cancellation of consequences. It is what you build after accepting them. I did not remove $1 of the debt. Some people will call that cold. They can. For years, I confused kindness with surrender. I believed love meant ignoring the small betrayals, so the larger story could remain beautiful. But a marriage cannot be saved by one person refusing to see it clearly. Today, I still live in the same house. The backyard lights are gone. The workshop is busier than ever, because I teach 2 nights a week at the center. Uncle Raymond's trust continues to grow, and most of it will outlive me. Sometimes I think about that party, the raised glass, the black dress, the confidence in Vanessa's voice when she announced she was taking her fair share. She believed money was power. She was wrong. Money is only a tool. The real power was patience. It was evidence. It was staying calm when 2 people expected me to break. And it was choosing to build something good from what they tried to steal. Vanessa thought the money was hers because she had already spent it in her imagination. In the end, she did receive an inheritance from my uncle. Just not the one she wanted. She inherited his lesson. Money never changed her. It simply turned up the volume until everyone could hear who she had always been.